Is it possible that Miami, Florida State, Clemson, and UNC could set aside their rivalries to help each other get out of the ACC? We've done some research and we'll explain how it can happen in this video. We did a video that came out on this Monday because we got a lot of questions about specifics, so we did a much deeper dive into the numbers of how this works. You don't need to go back and rewatch that video. We'll recap it here briefly later on. If you watched our first video, continue to stay tuned. The math that we came up with, the math that we've researched is brutal, but brutal for the ACC. I think it's good if you're a fan of one of the four teams I mentioned or one of the four teams that may partner with one of those four teams to get out of the ACC. Right now, the buyout to leave the ACC is $120 million. That number has been referenced several times. You heard A.D. Alford talk about that at Florida State. That number is pretty well known, pretty out there. That doesn't include the grant of rights, though, and that's the part that I think has a lot of teams tripped up right now. Estimates say that grant of rights media deal is roughly worth $300 to $600 million. That's a lot of money. Obviously, $120 million is as well, but not quite the same as nearly 5 times that amount on the high end of $600 million. So, to recap, for a team to leave the ACC, they would have to pay the $120 million plus the $300 to $600 million for the grant of rights, and be a total of between $420 million or $720 million. Somewhere in the middle of that. These are not disputed numbers. This is what it would cost. Per Andy Staples' writing in The Athletic, it would only take a simple majority to get out of the ACC, to dissolve it. We talked about this the other day. You need 8 teams to get this done. We'll link all of these stats and numbers and everything down in the description. Before I get into how this works, I need to ask a favor. Please take a quick moment to share this video with as many people as you can. The more people who understand this, the faster that we can put pressure on the ACC and our institutions, and the faster that we can accelerate this conference collapse. To Miami, Clemson, and North Carolina fans, and other valuable ACC institutions, like I said at the beginning, we should set aside our rivalries for the moment and try to work together to get out of this conference. I'm not asking for subs. I'm not asking for likes. You don't have to comment. In fact, if you're a fan of one of the other teams, don't subscribe to me because of this video. I cover FSU football, but I am a fan who wants to get out of this conference. And if you, like I, want the same thing, tag your AD, tag the folks associated with your institution, and let's get the word out there by sharing this video. Currently, 8 teams represent a simple majority. We did this slideshow the other day. We've updated some of it. Obviously, we added Miami and North Carolina for pretty clear reasons. Their ADs have come out and been pretty vocal about things as well lately. But let's go through it again quickly. We have updated some things. So stick with me. Again, the numbers at the end are what you really need to see. Number 1 is you announce that this group is going to formulate so that they can explore the options to leave the conference. Number 2, the group will initially consist of the 4 members, FSU, Miami, Clemson, and North Carolina. Number 3, we move on to look for 4 additional members. Number 4, we put it out there that this group will work together to secure not only their 4 financial futures, but also the 4 futures of the teams that have not been found just yet. Number 5, once all members of this group, Miami, Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, and then 4 more members have secured an agreement to join a new conference, they will coordinate to dissolve the ACC, and the conference will be over as we know it. What happens to the revenue of the teams that happen to leave? Well, from this group, it is possible that some teams land in a conference that exceeds the current value being paid by the ACC. Other teams may not exceed the current value being paid by the Atlantic Coast Conference. In that situation, like we talked about the other day, the members who exceed the current value agree to equally cover the difference for any members who do not exceed the value until 2036, the year that the grant of rights would be up. This ensures every member of the group will make equal or more than they currently do in the ACC until 2036. That's the point I want to get to and what I want to talk about. The members who are covering the lesser earners. So that's what we want to cover today. The numbers of what Florida State, Clemson, Miami, North Carolina, some of these teams may still make by having to cover what teams who fall in lesser conferences may end up with. It's not outside of the realm of possibilities to think that maybe Florida State and Clemson end up in the SEC and maybe North Carolina and Miami end up in the Big Ten. Obviously, different things can happen. 4 teams could land in one of those conferences, but let's just use for an example, the SEC takes 2 and the Big Ten takes 2 and base our projections off of that. So let's do a quick example. Here's how much the ACC versus the Big 12 payouts are currently. If you need to screenshot this, if you need to pause it and zoom in, that's fine. But I threw it up on the screen so that you could see the big difference. Right now, the Big 12 is paying out a little bit more than the ACC is, but that's projected to flip-flop as time goes on. And at the end of 2036, between 2023 and 2036, it will have been about a $60 million difference. Now, that's very weighted towards the end, and much of that comes in the last 4 years. This is a worst-case scenario. I think by the time that other teams joined the Big 12 and they brought in some new members, they would renegotiate their deal, and this number would even go down. But roughly, you'd be looking at about $60 million in lost revenue from teams having made the decision to go from the ACC to the Big 12. Now, those teams need to be compensated. And so you've got 4 teams that maybe improved their revenue, and you've got 4 teams that decreased it. So if you look at it from that perspective, you're looking at about $60 million over that span of time. It's about $4 million a year that each team who went to the Big Ten and the SEC would be on the hook for. Florida State would essentially be responsible for about $4 million to one of those lower programs. Maybe Miami's responsible for about $4 million, Clemson as well, and then UNC. And we've made up that $60 million gap. Want to know why that's so feasible? Because let's just take the SEC. Let's look at one more example, and I hope I'm not losing you with the numbers, but this is where I think it gets the most incredible. Look at the difference between a team that's in the ACC and the SEC over the rest of the lifetime of the Grant of Rights. You'd be looking at $600 million in increased media revenue. That is an alarming number and something that Florida State, Miami, Clemson, and North Carolina need to take advantage of immediately. You'd still be on the hook for the $60 million that you have to pay to that team that left the ACC and went to the Big 12, but that is a difference. That is a net of $540 million. These are conservative estimates too. When you look at them and you project them out over time, there's a good chance that Clemson and Florida State going to the SEC increases their brand. The ACC is not even going to exist past 2030 in most estimates. And so that money comes out that too. It's nearly $1 billion per team in increased revenue over this span. Again, are you on the hook for that $60 million for the life of that Grant of Rights deal with those teams that left the ACC and ended up making a little bit less money? Yes. Did you still come out nearly 10 times ahead? Absolutely. The $4 million a year that you would have to pay to, say, Virginia, who goes to the Big 12, or Pittsburgh, who goes to the Big 12, is absolutely pennies on the dollar compared to what you would make through the life of this deal. It is so much more valuable to be in the SEC, and the Big Ten's numbers are even more damning. Again, check our math. Go back and look at this. Happy to have you go look through what we've done here, but it would be massive for the teams to get out of this. We've got links down in the description for all of this stuff. Whether you want the projections, whether you're looking for the athletic article that we mentioned earlier, the buyouts, the Grant of Rights, we've got all of that down in the description, so go check it out. But again, when you just look at the simple facts of what Florida State, Miami, Clemson, North Carolina, these teams would earn by getting to another conference, they would have more than enough money to take care of those teams that went to the Big 12. In all reality, the Big 12, by adding a few more teams, would probably increase their media deals as well, and it would be even less money that Florida State, Miami, Clemson, North Carolina would be on the hook for. Again, if you've made it this far in this video, if the numbers haven't lost you, do me a favor, share the video. You don't have to like, you don't have to subscribe, you don't need to comment, share the video. Let's get the word out on this. Let's make more people aware that this is a very viable option. We've had people ask about, would this be collusion? Would the ACC sue these teams for doing this? I would welcome that. I would welcome that to go to court. I think that'd be a phenomenal thing for these teams. It would make it more contentious. It would bring more eyes, and I think it would dissolve the ACC even faster. We've had other really good questions in the comments. We will continue covering this. So if you're interested, you can throw a subscribe. Again, that's not my point here. I don't care about increasing the channel. I just want to get my team out of the ACC. And if you're the same way, you should help us out as well. Just before we go, I do want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at Gramco. You can go to thegramco.com right now. Get some of their Delta 8 products, whether you're looking for gummies, vapes, pre-rolls, flour. They've got a quick mix. They've got Delta 8 coffee. Whatever you're in the market for, Gramco is your one-stop shop. It's TJ25, TJ25 at checkout for thegramco.com. Appreciate them for their support. Appreciate all you guys for watching this, checking us out. Again, we're going to continue to cover conference realignment. As UNC's AD came out and made some comments this week, we thought it was important to put this video out and continue to work toward getting to that number of 8 to dissolve this Atlantic Coast Conference. Thank you guys for watching. We'll talk to you soon. Go Noles.